I am the Director of Public Engagement in the School of Public Affairs and Administration and the Director of the Truth, Racial Healing, and Transformation Center at Rutgers University, Newark. I would like to welcome you to the fifth annual National Day of Racial Healing. At this time, I would like to introduce my co-host for today, Kareem Willis.
Good morning, everyone. It is wonderful to be here with you all. My name is Kareem Willis, a final year PhD student at the School of Public Affairs Administration, as well as Director for Yendor Arts, a public arts consulting nonprofit here in the city of Newark.
Thank you, Kareem. You will hear from Kareem later on today. On behalf of our Chancellor, Nancy Cantor, who you will hear from in a few minutes, the Executive Administration, deans, faculty, staff, and students, we would like to welcome you to the 5th Annual National Day of Racial Healing. The National Day of Racial Healing began in 2017 as a part of W.K. Kellogg's Truth, Racial Healing, and Transformation efforts. Those efforts also included a partnership with the Association of American Colleges and Universities to provide funding for the establishment of Truth, Racial Healing, and Transformation campus centers on colleges and universities across the country. Rutgers University Newark was part of the original 10 institutions to host the campus center. We had our official launch during Black History Month in 2018 with our community partners, the Newark Public Library, the New Jersey Institute of Social Justice, and our own Mayor, Baraka. There are currently 28 TRHT campus centers across the country. The goal of each center is to dispel the belief in a myth of a hierarchy of human value based on differences, and prepare the next generation of strategic thinkers and leaders to dismantle institutional and structural racism. Kareem Willis is definitely one of those leaders who will help lead this effort. This effort is done through a shared humanity approach, meaning we all have shared experiences, and it's important for us to be able to engage in those experiences together. Each center is charged with understanding the history and the current realities of their communities on campus and the surrounding communities. The TRHT Center's mission and goals align with the strategic priorities of Rutgers University Newark and the city of Newark. Today, you experience the work we have been involved in for the past 3 years. It doesn't fall on us that yesterday we celebrated the national holiday for Dr. Martin Luther King, and tomorrow is the inauguration of the 46th President of the United States. We are still in the midst of an unprecedented global pandemic, a divisive country, and today it is really important that we start healing one community at a time. We will have opening remarks from our political and educational leaders. The city of Newark is extremely fortunate to have educational, business, healthcare, arts and culture, and political leaders who work together to create an ecosystem of economic development, safe streets, and educational attainment. They are leaders that are part of an anchor institution collaborative. So we are fortunate that they are working together for the betterment of the city of Newark and its surrounding communities. At this time, I would like to introduce you to the political protector of the city of Newark, our very own Honorable Mayor Ras J. Baraka. Mayor Baraka is the 40th mayor for the city of Newark, born, raised, and educated at our alma mater, University High School. He is an educator, author, and a proud resident of this city. He is leading this city through a coronavirus crisis where our Black and Brown communities and residents are impacted at a higher rate. And his leadership helped with during the summer with the racial arrest In this city, we had one of the most peaceful protests in the wake of George Floyd murder. It is my absolute pleasure to introduce Mayor Ras J. Baraka.
Good morning. Thank you. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. I want to thank Rutgers Truth and Racial Healing and Transformation Center as well for giving me the opportunity to be on today to talk about what I think is incredibly important for not just Newark and the state, but for the entire country. I'm happy that our federal delegation is also involved in this. Congressman Payne, Senator Booker, and Senator Menendez pushing to make sure that this becomes a national commission here in this country. It is incredibly important for that to happen, and the support of Congressman Lee's bill, which will help make this a reality. And it's high time that we deal with this. If we just pay attention to the events that happened at the Capitol, it reminds me of the first cannons that were fired in the Battle of Fort Sumter in 1861. Just a year after the President Abraham Lincoln was, inaugurated in November of 1860, states began to secede from the Union. And the question was about the balance of power, but at the center of that question was also about Black bodies, was about race and white supremacy. And those things were ignored. And I don't think anybody at that time believed that it would result in a civil war, as nobody thought that in 2021 that people would invade the Capitol to prevent the transferring of power, to prevent a democratic election from taking place in this country, which means that this is incredibly serious. And we can't turn our back or our eyes to this. We have to pay close attention to what is going on. And even more so, we have to make sure that we organize, educate, and inform the populace so we are not pushing this country in a direction of going backwards, but going forwards. And so I'm happy that we're having these discussions. I want to congratulate Rutgers for adding this center onto the campus, like many other centers around the country, and partnering with our federal delegation to make sure that this is a national push and that this country finally deals with the question of the color line. As W.E.B. Du Bois said, the question is the color line, and there's always been and it still is in this country, and we have to have the courage to deal with it and the resources to make equity and justice a reality, because the only way you deal with racial healing, the only way you heal is if justice is done. You cannot heal unless there is justice. And so we have to advocate for justice so that healing can begin. And a kind of center like this begins to raise the necessary issues for us to center on, focus on, and begin to dismantle systems that create racial divides in this country, and allows us the opportunity to discuss, talk, and heal around issues of race and color and nationality and national origin. So once again, thank you to Rutgers. Thank you to the Truth and Racial Healing and Transformation Center. Thank you for all of the folks that are doing the great work in this city to make sure that Newark leads the way in creating democracy and the community that is fair, that is safe, that is equitable for all Americans and all residents of this city equally. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Baraka. We appreciate your words, your efforts, and your leadership at this time. At this time, it is my pleasure to bring on Representative Charles Barker, who will be representing Senator Cory Booker. A month ago, Senator Cory Booker submitted a resolution to form a U.S. Commission on Truth, Racial Healing, and Transformation. That resolution was a companion bill to what was submitted in the Congress by Senator Barbara Lee from California. Senator Booker is not a stranger to the city of Newark. He was the former mayor. He was a former councilman, and he is currently the senator for the state of New Jersey. We appreciate all of the efforts that Senator Booker has put forth, not just for the city of Newark, but throughout the entire state and throughout the country to help move this conversation along about truth, racial healing, and transformation. To provide remarks from Senator Cory Booker's office, I would like to introduce political strategist Charles Barker. Welcome, Charles.
Thank you very much, Ms. Troy. And thank you very much, Mayor Baraka, for those remarks. Thank you all for welcoming me here today. Senator Booker could not make it, but he appreciates the opportunity to have a letter read on his behalf. Dear friends, thank you for inviting me to share a few words as you gather for the 5th Annual National Day of Racial Healing. As inheritors of the movement that Dr. King left behind, we must continue to elevate society and combat discrimination through courageous acts of love. Additionally, we must continue to gather to address the deep-seated racism that repeatedly rears its evil head to obstruct committed efforts toward a more just and equitable future. We must offer safe spaces where we can speak truthfully about America's history and the systemic injustices that have shaped this country. As Rutgers Newark's Truth, Racial Healing, and Transformation Center shows us, we must offer support and healing, as well as transformative perspectives and programs that bring people together and level the playing field. The idea of healing through a love that speaks truth, encapsulated by the theme of today's event, requires us to be bold in our endeavors and to continue the struggle of our ancestors. I am encouraged by the dedicated efforts made by this university. Whether you are proactively engaging with community officials or responding to the requests for your guidance, your actions are the embodiment of what we need right now. As we process the current state of affairs in America and look forward to new leadership, I am reminded of Dr. King's words: "The time is always right to do what is right." Now is the time for us to do right, to recognize that our most powerful strength lies within our ability to make our voices heard, to build coalitions, and to embark on grassroots activism that inspires real change. May this day encourage this power, and may it serve as a source of renewed hope to continue our efforts, not just with words and celebration, but with actions and unwavering commitment to equality and justice. Thank you all, and God bless.
Charles, thank you. Please extend our appreciation and gratitude to Senator Booker on our behalf. Have a good one.
Will do. Thank you.
At this time, it is my pleasure to introduce the Honorable Congressman Donald Payne Jr. The Payne family has been a long advocate that started with his father, Donald Payne Sr. They serve as the representatives for the 10th District. Donald Payne Jr. is not just a congressman in the state of New Jersey. He is a friend to Rutgers University, Newark. He is an avid supporter to the students. Every year, his office has offered the opportunity for students in the School of Public Affairs Administration and across the state to intern in his office. He makes himself available to the development of the next generation of strategic leaders. He is also a signer on the resolution that was submitted by Barbara Lee for the establishment of the U.S. Commission on Truth, Racial Healing, and Transformation. It is my pleasure to introduce Donald Payne Jr.
Let's see, where am I? Oh, there I am. Good morning. It's a real honor and a privilege to be with you this morning for such a timely and important topic. And I'd like to thank Rutgers University for always being a wonderful partner and a great learning institution for our young people. And it is no mistake that I reach into your bastion of learning to have young people work with me in my office. I gain as much as they do, so I will continue to have that partnership with Rutgers long into the future. So, good morning. It's a real pleasure to be here for your 5th Annual National Day of Racial Healing. I want to thank the great people at Rutgers University, Newark, for the invitation to speak to you today. I'm proud that they are one of the Truth, Racial Healing, and Transformation campuses centers across this nation and known for that work. These centers empower the next generation of leaders in the fight for racial equality. And I fully support their mission to reach out to communities in order to heal them. It is our mission that is badly needed today. Yesterday, we celebrated Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday and his pursuit of racial equality through nonviolence. Tomorrow, we will inaugurate Joseph R. Biden as the 46th president of the United States. A president who will have the most diverse cabinet in American history, and I'm glad to have had a part of helping him select some of those candidates. We should be celebrating the continued evolution of our country into a more accepting and equal society. But the riot and insurrection on Capitol Hill showed us that we are not there yet. Far, far from it. We are still a country with people who are committed to inequality and racial injustice. But the response to the riots show that those forces are weaker than ever. Millions of Americans of all colors denounced the terrorism that damaged our Capitol building and caused the death of 5 people. And millions more are questioning why these criminals were treated differently than peaceful protesters for Black Lives Matters. These are important steps for our country to take in national reckoning for equality. Another important step occurred at the ballot boxes across the country. I was proud of how African Americans are finally understanding their democratic power. When we voted, Obama won. When we failed to vote in equal numbers, Trump won. When we voted again, Biden won. And in Georgia, we helped elect another Black senator and gave Congress back to the Democrats. Now we have a chance to pass laws that attack racial injustice directly. We can finally work to permanently eliminate persistent racial inequalities. When Black Lives Matter protests took to the streets, I supported them fully. I even participated in several protest events in Newark and other cities in my district. And it is important to take to the streets to protest for inequality. That was what this country was built on, and it has to be done peacefully. But it's far more important to show up at the ballot box and to vote to eliminate it. That is how we create lasting change in democracy. So I'm proud to be here to support racial healing. And I will continue to support all the efforts to improve it in Congress and nationwide. Once again, thank you so much for your invitation this morning to be a part of this session. Thank you.
Congressman Payne, thank you always for your efforts, your dedication, and diligence to these times are definitely needed. So we thank you.
Thank you.
Yes. The other senator for the state of New Jersey could not join us today, but he sent a video. So at this time, we would like to share remarks from Senator Robert Menendez. In our new reality, technology is not always our friend. So as we are working out to share Senator Menendez's video, I would like to bring on our next speaker to extend opening remarks. It is my pleasure to introduce the educational leader of Rutgers University Newark. Nancy Cantor came to Rutgers Newark in 2014 from Syracuse University. She is a national and international leader in the issues of educational attainment, diversity, collaboration, and strategic planning. She joined us in 2014, and one of the first things that Chancellor Cantor did was listen. She engaged the entire institution in a series of charrettes, from students, faculty, staff, community members, residents, political leaders, business leaders. She talked to everyone. A leader that came into the institution and listened. One of the things that we need in this country today is leadership that listens. Once Chancellor Cantor listened to everyone's voices, she designed a series of strategic priorities and initiatives that help with the ecosystem in the city of Newark. We are proud to say that we are not just in Newark, New Jersey, but we are of Newark, New Jersey. It is under her leadership that the TRHT Center at Rutgers University Newark has flourished, with her support, with the support from the executive team, to where we are now honoring the 5th day of National Day of Racial Healing, the 5th annual National Day of Racial Healing. So it is my pleasure to introduce Chancellor Nancy Cantor.
We are so grateful to be able to pause a day after Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday to celebrate his legacy and engage in a National Day of Racial Healing focused on a theme so dear to all of us, lifting our voices through education. This theme underlies so clearly the work day in and day out of our wonderful Truth, Racial Healing, and Transformation Center, led, as you've heard, by our fearless director, Sharon Stroy, with so many Newark partners, from the Newark Public Library and the New Jersey Institute for Social Justice, to the students in Newark Public Schools, to our own NJ STEP, HLLC, and LSAM students, and faculty and staff across our community. And speaking of that deep and broad commitment to racial justice, we're here today following the courageous and steadfast leadership, as you've heard, of Senators Booker and Menendez, Representative Payne, and our own wonderful Mayor, Raz J. Baraka, who work each day, every day, to right the landscape of opportunity in our community and nation. We also are grateful to all of you out there who are joining us for Rutgers Newark's annual Day of Racial Healing. As we all witness the destructive events of the last year, from brutal police killings to the white supremacist mob taking over the Capitol, it is once again clear that our nation desperately needs both racial healing and reparative action. At this moment of peril in our nation's democracy, there's probably nothing more critical that we, as hopeful educators and students, artists and businesses, faith leaders and citizens, can confront than using the tools of truth-telling, healing, and transformative work to address a racial reckoning so long overdue. As William Darity and Kirsten Mullen call out in their recent volume, From Here to Equality, on the need for modern reparations for the intergenerational effects of white supremacy. As they detail, we have started this process many times in history, from Reconstruction to the Civil Rights struggle. And each time, despite the substantive periods of real progress And they were real and reflected such hard work by so many courageous citizens and leaders. But each time has been followed by despairing retreats, from Reconstruction to Jim Crow, from the civil rights victories in the 1960s to 4 decades of so-called colorblind policies that were anything but colorblind, and have left us with systemic racism eating away at the very well-being and security and freedom of our communities of color. We need only look around us in our great city and follow the historical route from the bravery of the Newark Rebellion through over 50 years of perseverance and hard work by the faith community, the Newark Community Development Network, and citizens of alliances alike, to today's moment of both shame and hope. Shame as we confront this harsh reality, and hope as we see a movement for reparations taking hold. Right here in New Jersey, where the median net worth of white families is $309,000, while that for Black and Latinx families is just $5,900 and $7,020 respectively, as our wonderful partner Ryan Haygood and his colleagues at the New Jersey Institute for Social Justice rightfully call out. At times like this, it can be difficult to see reason to hope. But as my dear colleague Jackie Mattis, Dean of the School of Arts and Sciences, recently wrote, and I quote, "Hopeful people do not wish, they imagine and act. They believe in their agency, that is, their capacity to achieve the outcomes." And when we think about how to spread hope and agency together, it feels so fitting that in this moment of reckoning, the focus for this year's National Day of Racial Healing is on lifting our voices through education. For education is precisely about cultivating that hope and agency by lifting our voices. And it revolves around 3 pillars that we at Rutgers Newark so embrace. Truth-telling, as for example, when our public scholars work with local citizens to set out the historical record of oppression and document its current footprint. Racial healing, as perhaps most impactfully was represented by the joining of voices in the arts, from the narratives of filmmakers to documenting anti-racist organizing, to the murals of New Arts Justice, to the healing sounds of Newark. But it doesn't stop there, does it? No. Most critical to our work is the efforts to turn truth-telling and healing into much-needed transformation. Collaborations all across our many partners that aim to produce social mobility and equitable growth in our communities. And showing our agency through action is what we must do. And we all are on the mayor's page on that front. From the cross-sector collaboration in the Newark 2020 initiative to his Equitable Growth Commission and the investment in local Black and Latinx businesses in the 40 Acres and a Mule Fund, to his new Office of Violence Prevention, to the Newark City of Learning Collaborative, and steadfast support for the arts as the beacon of social justice. We have a leader, and we are following together here in Newark. We also have our national representatives, as you've heard, spearheading legislation for a national commission on truth, racial healing, and transformation to complement the legislation in Congress for a commission on reparations, and more recently, the George Floyd Justice in Policing Act, as well as support from our Essex delegation to the New Jersey State Legislature for a range of progressive policies, from remediation on environmental toxins in frontline communities like ours, to addressing the digital divide and creating inclusive justice for New Jersey dreamers, and the long-awaited right to vote for formerly incarcerated members of our community. So as we enter today's conversations about how to approach racial healing together, we can't be afraid. We must not be afraid to face the truth about our nation about our communities, about ourselves, as painful as that may be. But we have also to understand that the hope for moving forward is right here. It is us together. Let's do that here today, lifting our voices, lifting up education as an essential road to truth, racial healing, and transformation. Thank you for being with us. Thank you for all that everyone does to make things right.
Thank you, Chancellor Cantor. Welcome back. Welcome back, everyone.
Hello, hello, hello.
Kareem, were you able to get something to eat for a little bit?
Barely. I got like 2 fruit snacks in because I was on another meeting.
Okay, so is it just me, or do we find ourselves in more meetings now than we did before COVID-19?
Oh, it is not just you. And I think I want to blame everybody else, but I kind of have to take the blame because I feel like I've set the expectation like, oh no, I'm home. It's no worries. Like, yeah, I've cut down on travel time, so that gives me an extra hour here and there. So let's go. Let's have this meeting. But no, yeah, we're definitely way busier.
I know. So welcome back, everyone. Our next session, as we wait for the rest of our guests, is a racial healing circle. So Kareem,
Hey.
I want to ask you, the first time you heard the term racial healing circle, what did you think it meant? What was your reaction? And just how did you receive it?
So no lie, the first time that you asked me to participate in one, and this was before I got the whole gist of what TRHT was and everything, I was very nervous because, like I said, my experience from speaking about race in certain spaces was not necessarily the most positive. And so all those assumptions I was taking into the space with me. And then when I got there and then you posed a question, I'm just like, so what that got to do with nothing? Like, why do you need to know my birth order? Like, what is that? And so I left the space kind of almost disappointed, but then I learned that there's a method to the madness, because then I started reflecting on, like, in my mind, I was like, as a facilitator, why aren't you talking about those things? Why aren't you posing these questions? But then when we walked away with that like understanding, and I was just like, oh, okay, all right. So now I look forward to participating in racial healing circles because I just think it's a very creative and fun way to kind of really, again, allow you to shed your assumptions and all the nerves and so on, and really just be in the space, like authentically, and participate. So I'm excited for everybody else to see what goes on, understand how it's a very important tool for building community, for allowing people to interact within communities without the assumptions, without the expectations, and again, just like be in a space and be transformed by the space, to think differently about the space.
Yeah, and I want the audience to know that a racial healing circle is not in place of anti-bias training, microaggression training, trainings, restorative justice, or intergroup dialogues. It is a tool for the work that leads to healing. But I think it's an important tool to begin with. I think it should be used as an introductory to get people to relax into their own humanity, their own shared experiences, and then engage in those other dialogue circles, difficult conversations. One of the most impactful times in doing racial healing circles were the students at Rutgers University, Newark. So in our first year, being in all transparency, we were a little hesitant as well about racial healing circle. And this was in 2018 when we officially launched. And so good things because of our partnership with the Association of American Colleges and Universities. They offered a training session for us as directors to truly understand what a racial healing circle was. But guess how they did it? They taught us what it is not. It is not a conversation about race. It's not a conversation about anti-racism. It's not a dialogue on cultural competencies. It is an opportunity for us to come together in a shared, brave, and responsible space to share our personal stories. So as our panelists are logging in, Antonia, bring them up on the screen so that we can get started. And so it is one, and I wanted to go back to the story of the students. It was the students that, when you talk about students leading the way, it was the students that really forced us to understand what a racial healing circle was. We had students from all ethnicities, all backgrounds that were meeting weekly in somebody's dorm room. And their conversations were religion, politics, race, ethnicity, culture. They were just meeting by themselves. And so one of the staff members in student affairs said, why don't you talk to Director Stroy about TRHT? Only to find out that they had already organized organically a racial healing circle without the structure or the format. So all I really did was train them, feed them, and let them continue to do what they do.
Sounds like student engagement to me. Food.
Students leading the way. That's it, to where it is now officially titled, Are You in Dialogues, that is ran out of the Division of Student Affairs. Once again, students leading the way. And as long as we give them some structure, format, and college students some food, it's okay. So it looks like our panelists are here today.
Yes, they are.
Awesome. Josie, welcome back from that awesome conversation with Dean Ratcliffe Lyons. Are all of our panelists here so we can get started?
One of them, unfortunately, is on her way to the hospital. She had an injury just moments ago.
Okay.
So I apologize on her behalf.
No.
Yeah.
And another gentleman had an injury a day ago.
So we will participate in a racial healing circle with all of us.
Absolutely.
Please extend our regards to those individuals and that they're healthy, especially in this time and season. We want people to be safe and healthy. So let's get started. In this unprecedented time, I always start a racial healing circle with, give me one word on how you're feeling. And as you can see from our panelists who are not here today, it is important to do what we call a check-in. We have to check in with our families, with our friends, with each other, co-workers, just to see how they're doing. We have all been impacted by COVID-19, the racial unrest in this country, as well as the divisive political climate. So I'm going to ask all of my panelists to give me one word that will describe how you are feeling today.
Energized.
Awesome. Next.
I'm ready. I'm feeling ready. That's just ready. I don't know what for, whatever it is, I'm ready.
Awesome. Josie.
You're muted, Josie.
I'm always encouraged and inspired.
Awesome. Tiffany.
Focus.
All right. So for the next 20 minutes, put aside your cell phones, the busyness of today. Just be present in this space. Racial healing is an opportunity for individuals from diverse backgrounds to share their personal stories in a safe, brave space. So for the next 20 minutes, we will go through a series of questions this afternoon and then open the space for discussions, questions, and/or comments. The first question that we're going to start with, introduce yourself, your name, your favorite food or dessert, and where was your great-grandmother born? So My name is Sharon Stroy. My favorite, I'm just going to go with my favorite dessert, is anything chocolate. Chocolate ice cream, chocolate cookies, chocolate donuts. I really need to stay away from the Entenmann's. My great grandmothers, so let me be clear. My maternal great grandmother, I don't know where she was born. My maternal family is from North Carolina, but I don't know if that's where my great grandmother was born. My paternal great grandmother was born in Georgia, and there's a long legacy of family from the state of Georgia. Next.
Gary Campbell. And my favorite food would be, I'll go with grilled cheese, the way I used to make them when I was 10 years old. And the third one was,
where were your great grandmothers born?
I would go with North Carolina as well.
Okay, awesome. Tiffany.
I'll start with where my great grandmother was born, because she's first. I wouldn't be here without her, so we'll pay homage to the ancestor first. Her birthday was actually yesterday. She would have been 89, and her name was Mrs. Lena Mae Daniels. She was born in North Carolina. She was a sharecropper, and just wanted to pay homage to her. And the next one was
your name and your favorite food.
My name is Tiffany Salas. Sometimes it sounds like a song when it comes out of my mouth, but today it's just Tiffany Salas. My favorite food is actually not soul food. It's actually Nigerian food. I actually really love the spice on Nigerian food, and since that's probably where my roots are, that's probably why I like it.
That's amazing. That's what you're connecting to. It is okay. Kareem.
Hey, Kareem Willis here. My favorite food is anything curry. Anything that you put curry on, that it becomes my favorite. And I think, like Director Stroy, I know when my maternal great grandmother was born, Jamaica, but I haven't had a conversation with my dad about like my paternal grandparents or that lineage, so I'm not quite sure. I know we have some type of I don't know, some other ethnicity thrown in there on my father's side, but we never quite had that conversation. So now this is definitely back on my list.
Mm-hmm. Josie.
So Josie Gonzalez, favorite food, tea and dessert, like tea and cake. Like I can have that for dinner and breakfast, tea and cake. And both of my great grandmothers were born on the island of St. Vincent and the Grenadines.
Awesome. And so part of the reason we ask people to share personal things about themselves as they're part of their introduction is because most of the time people start with, my name is, I work here, my title is, but how do you build community around a title and a role when we all do so many different things? So we start out with the introductory question to see where we have some similarities. And as you can see, just in this small group, 3 of us call family North Carolina is home. The next thing in a racial healing circle, and we're going to ask our production manager, Antonia, to pull up a document. It's called Touchstones. Touchstones are our group agreements. Whenever we engage in any racial healing work, whether it's a racial healing circle, a conversation, we always must adhere to group agreements. This is how you build consensus, meaning that everybody that is in that circle, or in that group, or in that conversation agree to the rules of engagement. They are agreeing to the rules of participation. So as Antonia brings them up, what I'm going to ask is each of us to read them in order out loud, because we need to speak it into the space. Read it out loud At least two of them, because we have a small number of group. So, and in order. Antonia, I need you to enlarge the screen or scroll it up. That works. So I'm going to start. And so I'm reading at the moment. Be 100% present. Go back down, Antonia. Okay, there we go. Be 100% present, extending and presuming welcome. Set aside the usual distractions of things undone from yesterday, things to do tomorrow. Bring all of yourself to the work. We all learn most effectively in spaces that welcome us. Welcome others to this place and this work, and presume that you are welcome. The next one that I'm going to read is listen deeply. Listen intently to what is said. Listen to the feelings beneath the words. To listen another soul into life, into a condition of disclosure and discovery, may be almost the greatest service that any human being ever achieved, ever performs for one another. Writer Douglas Steere. Listen to yourself also. Strive to achieve a balance between listening and reflecting, speaking and acting. So I'm going to ask a volunteer to read the next two.
I think you guys should go up a bit. Okay. Always by invitation. It is never share or die. You will be invited to share in pairs, small groups, and in the large group. The invitation is exactly that. You will determine the extent to which you want to participate in our discussion and activities. No fixing. Each of us is here to discover our own truths, to listen to our own inner teacher, to take our own inner journey. We're not here to set someone else straight or to help right another's wrong, to fix or correct what we perceive as broken or incorrect in another member of the group.
Suspend judgment. Set aside your judgments by creating a space between judgments and reactions. We can listen to the other and to ourselves more fully, and thus our perspectives, decisions, and actions are more informed. Identify assumptions. Our assumptions are usually invisible to us, yet they undergird our worldview and thus our decisions and our actions. By identifying our assumptions, we can set them aside and open our viewpoints to greater possibilities.
Speak your truth. Say what it is in your heart, trusting that your voice will be heard and your contribution respected. Your truth may be different from, even the opposite of, what another in the circle has said. Speaking your truth is not debating with or correcting or interpreting what another has said. Own your truth by speaking only for yourself, using I statements. Respect silence. Silence is a rare gift in our busy world. After you or another has spoken, take time to reflect and fully listen, without immediately filling the space with words.
Maintain confidentiality. Create a safe space by respecting the confidential nature and content of discussions held in the circle. What is said in the circle remains there. And finally, when things get difficult, turn to wonder. If you find yourself disagreeing with another, becoming judgmental, shutting down in defense, try turning to wonder. I wonder what brought her to this place. I wonder what my reaction teaches me. I wonder what he's feeling right now.
Thank you. Is there anything else do you think we need to add to these touchstones, to these group agreements? If not, give me a head nod, a thumbs up that you are in agreeing with these agreements. Awesome. Thank you, Antonia. You can take it down. So we're going to go through just an abbreviated version of a racial healing circle. The next aspect of a circle is called a reintroductory question. It is at this time when we're in a virtual Zoom room, Zoom space, we usually send individuals into a breakout room to talk amongst themselves. Now, when individuals go into the breakout room, they have 2 minutes to answer the question, but the other person cannot respond. They can't ask any questions. They just have to listen to the story. It is at this time when we find those talkers that like to talk find this particular activity very difficult. But the purpose of the activity and this particular prompt is to activate active listening, to be able to hear somebody else's story. And the questions are designed based on the group. So because everybody in this group, well, I'm gonna say everybody in the traditional sense, except me, is an artist. But I'm an artist. I create opportunities. So that's my artistic space. Anything other than that, all you're going to see is some stick figures, and singing is definitely out. So that's not about to happen today. So the question for my audience, for the group, when was the first time you knew you wanted to be an artist, and who supported you in that decision? And so I'm going to ask for a volunteer for someone to go first. The question again, when was the first time you knew you wanted to be an artist, and who supported you in that decision?
I'll go first.
All right, Gary.
I was 10 years old and I was in the Pentecostal church, and I was able to beat bongos in time, in rhythm. And I didn't know I never knew how that happened. It just happened. And the people that supported me was the church members who danced and shouted when I played with the drummer and the organist and the pianist. So I realized that at that point, I was an artist. I had something to give the world.
Awesome. Next.
So I can go next. So where I'm from, in my country, we don't really talk about being an artist. You are a writer, you're a dancer, you are this thing as part of the art space. And so, and so I started writing poetry very young and still to this day. But when I recognized that I could be an artist, and the person who did that for me was actually Gary Campbell. And wow. Gary Campbell, and so we actually have this tape conversation that we did as an introduction to our very first collaboration. And Gary called me an activist artist and sort of created a space for activists to be creative about, and because also I wanted to work with creators, because I thought creators, as we know, the world changes because of artists. Writers, painters have always charted a way forward. And so Gary was sort of the person who said, well, you can be, well, you're an artist. What that work that you're engaged in is artistic work. So it was Gary Campbell.
Thank you, Josie.
That's great.
Tiffany.
I knew I wanted to be an artist because of Channel 13. It was Channel 13 in my day. I don't know if it's a different channel now. I've moved so many times, but I guess it would be PBS. PBS helped me to know and unlock the artist within me because of Bob Ross, actually. Bob Ross, I thought, was like the coolest guy. He painted so quickly. It was always like this finished painting when he started, but like he was telling you what to do to make it like burst with color, a little yellow here. And he was so calm. He helped me to unlock that artistry within me. And I also attribute just coming from a super creative, super talented group of folks. My uncle was always an artist. As a child, I was the only child for a really long time before my little sisters came along. So he was able to paint my entire bedroom with Disney characters, and it was all freehand. And it looked like Goofy, it looked like, you know, Mickey Mouse, it looked like everybody. And it was just always just a thing to be creative, not really calling it anything, not really calling it art, but just being free and being yourself. Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Kareem.
I have a similar story to Josie, actually. So I grew up Caribbean, and so there's this big stress on being a lawyer, doctor, teacher, maybe police officer, but not really an artist. Artistry is what you did as a hobby. So when I wanted to get into fashion, I didn't necessarily get the support that I thought I needed until I was like an adult, and they would actually see me doing those things, like consulting with people on what to wear and so on, that they would consider that a potential source of income for me. But like Josie, I actually met someone in the artist community, and I think if my memory serves me right, it might have been Tiffany. I don't know if she remembers this,
No
but
way.
she came. Yes, you came to a Yendor exhibition when we had, I think it was the last one that we did in Teachers Village, and we met. You know, at that time I call her Shafani. This is the name of her fashion label, right? And we were having a conversation about it. I think I complimented her outfit, and she was asking me what it is that I do, and I was like, I'm not really an artist. I'm more of an arts administrator. And she's just like, but you work with Yendor, right? And I'm like, yeah. She said, well, that's your artistry, because without you, this probably would not have been possible. And I was just like, you know what? I am an artist. I am an artist. So like you, Sharon, you know, curating these events and making these things possible is our artistry, and that makes me an artist. So thank you for that, Tiffany. I don't know if I ever told you that.
Wow, God bless you. Wow, it just made me blossom on the inside. It's beautiful.
We're all fist bumping right now.
But so as you reflected on that, now look at this space, and I don't think as we prepare for this that I don't think Gary knew that he was the one for Josie, or Tiffany definitely didn't know that she was the one for Kareem. But as you've taken the moment to reflect and listen to the stories, what resonated with you? What impacted you? How did this connect to you on a humanity level?
You just realize that your day-to-day has more impact on people, and other people's day-to-day has more impact. We have so much more impact on each other, but we gloss over it because we move so fast, I think.
Yeah. When Kareem just said that, it made me actually go back to a thought. For a really long time, I was an Uber driver because I needed to make ends meet, and I needed to do my art full time. It was just a part of my sanity and my mental health overall. So I met an Indian woman who was coming to visit her family for the holidays, and she asked me what I did. She was more interested in me being a person outside of the profession of Uber driving. And she said to me, well, that's wonderful. You know, you're an artist and you're following your art. It's always great to inspire people. Even if you never have children, that will be your legacy with the seeds that you leave behind, the knowledge that you give, the push that you give to people, whether you know you're giving them a push or not. And she dropped that in my lap. And so just hearing Kareem say that is just, you know, it's just resonating even more now with me, what she said, and how I think I need to continue to live my life outside of that every day.
Absolutely. It's so important to understand that, and I think we don't realize how much of a circle of influence that we have. We think we have this little space in this corner, you know, in this big world, and all of these things that is happening, that we don't realize that our daily, thank you, Gary, our daily interaction with people can change their lives. It can change their trajectory. And especially with children, you never know who or what they grow up to become and what type of impact that they leave. So when we do a racial healing circle, we usually end on what is called a deep reflection prompt. It's a opportunity for you to share a story that sometimes has been a little challenging, but it doesn't allow you to stay in that space. So the goal of truth, racial healing, and transformation is one, acknowledge truth. We have to acknowledge the truth. Once we acknowledge truth, our truth, everybody else's, and respect other people's truths, then we can come together to engage in some racial healing, and that's when the transformation begins. So the last question, I'm going to read it a couple of times to give you a chance to think about it. Share a personal story about a time in your career when you did not get the opportunity you thought you deserved. How did it make you feel? And how has it empowered or changed your life and or the life of others? Once again, share a personal story about a time in your career when you did not get the opportunity you thought you deserved. How did it make you feel? And how has it empowered or changed your life and or the lives of others? Who would like to go first?
I'll go first.
All right, Gary.
When I came to Channel 78, I work as a producer and a camera operator. I got this job by actually doing a play. I did a short rendition on film, and the manager saw the play. It was about church and people in the street, and he wanted to hire me immediately. And since then, the footage has been lost. I thought my claim to fame would be that footage. I thought I would be able to spread it and make a name for myself, because I dealt with church and homosexuality and homelessness, and we lost the tape. And I was so upset for so long. But I've been at the studio for 5 years since, and I've had an opportunity to do The Artistry Creates the World, a YouTube series, and get so much exposure because I got that opportunity. So that anger that I had within myself, it's gone, and it was replaced by the process of what happened as a result of me just being in that moment and following through.
Thank you. Thank you. Next. Still thinking of a story?
So I suppose, I've had a long career because I'm an old person. So not a career, I would say, because I see myself as a worker in the economy. And so I've been working for a long time. And because I've had this sort of consistent and persistent worldview, I've had sort of many opportunities to transform and grow and change. Change spaces. And so recently I had a very public work upset, very, very public. And I thought, oh my gosh, well, I've come to this place called Newark, and I really love this town. And Gary and I met at the Marion Wright Thompson's lecture series when we first met, and we started talking about the artistry creates the world, and so I'm in this town that I love, and I'd like to do some work with, and I'd love to do some work with artists, and damn, and then these other opportunities just opened themselves up in Newark itself to be consistent and persistent in the work that I do. And so what I'm gathering from that, and what it's reinforcing, is these challenges, they are a moment in time, And if you are consistent and identify with your core values, that you will find a space to express yourself. And so, yeah, that's what I'm reflecting on. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Tiffany.
Mine seems so vain. It really doesn't seem super vain now that I think of it, but it's a part of my story. I am a published wardrobe stylist, so there was a time where I was set to do the American Music Awards, and that was supposed to be like this really big deal for me. Like, I feel like every opportunity is a really big deal. You know, I take everything with like such grandeur, just because it is. You know, it's billions of people in this world, and to be chosen to do the things that, you know, you're chosen for is just a blessing. So I think you should approach it with humility at all times. But this one time I had this guy I was styling, and all of a sudden for American Music Awards, they chose not to go with my styling expertise. And I thought, how dare they? You know, I've given so much to this project. I've done this and that, and I paid my dues in the fashion industry for sure, 10 times over. And I said, well, why not me? But then it helped me to have a stronger backbone in the industry, because it is a very cutthroat industry. And it was like they brought in somebody's friend of a family member or something. But I had given my time. So I said, why not me? So now when I have teenagers and others, I do a lot of mentoring. When I have these teenagers come and say, well, I want to get into the fashion industry, I want to style because it seems like the coolest thing you can be for some reason. Everybody wants to be a wardrobe stylist, but it takes much work, much discipline, much knowledge. You can't microwave that type of career. At least I don't think so. And I'm able to offer them things that I didn't know beforehand. So, like I said, having those seeds of knowledge just be planted all over the place, they'll grow after you leave this earth and then some.
So I just want to say this. It's not vain. It's your truth.
Thank you. I look at it all as such vanity. I'm sorry.
No, it's not vain. It's your truth, and that's your story. And if that's your skill set, that's your skill set. Everybody needs to look good.
Yes,
it makes you feel good.
It does make you feel good.
Right, looking good makes you feel good. And you know, unfortunately, some people can't focus on that because they need to focus on feeling full from some food. But you know, if that's your skill set, as many people as you possibly can help. So we want to dismantle that thought of that this is vanity. No, that's not. That's your truth. Kareem.
You might as well call my name. I'm one of those. If I don't look good, I don't feel good. Like this morning, even when I checked in, I was just like, "Whew, I probably should have." They're gonna be all over my face. I probably should have got a little powder on somewhere. But yeah, no, it's and growth will have you looking at that as if it's vain, but no, it's because you've managed to grow past it and see it. Because I mean, even my story, I think about when I was transitioning from, like, I was wrapping up my MPA career as a student, and I was going through just some tough financial times, and I was working with Yendo, and I was like, look, I have to leave this. I love this job. I love who I work for. I love the work that I get to do, but I need some more money. So I applied to this position to be the director of some programming for an LGBTQ organization, and they turned me down. And like Tiffany, I was like, how do you not know who I am? How you what? Impossible. So I mean, and I was really kind of, I think my ego was really hurt because I was just like, maybe this is not what I'm supposed to be doing. I think I got it down on lock. I think this is what I'm supposed to be doing. And then after that, I got word that I got into the PhD program, fully funded. And looking back now, I'm glad that they turned me down, because I'm pretty sure if I had gotten that opportunity to go be the director of that organization, or that department within that organization, I would have either delayed this PhD thing or would feel compelled to choose that job opportunity over the PhD journey. And now that I'm on the tail end of the PhD journey, I can see kind of like the growth that I'm pretty sure I probably would not have recognized had I been in that position, and as well as the opportunities for impact, which is what I want to be able to do, to make positive impact in whatever space I go into. And just being like having that experience as a PhD student allows me to do that in ways that I'm not sure I would have been able to do otherwise. Maybe I would, but it just feels like I probably would not have been able to do so otherwise. So I'm grateful for that. I've been in rooms where I just mentioned, oh, I'm a PhD student, and the whole energy in the room shifts, right? And it's like, oh, you know what, I'm a part of something bigger. And I have that perspective now.
Yeah, yeah. And so we usually end a racial healing circle with reflections, thoughts. And this particular question is designed for two goals. One, everybody experiences some type of pain, trauma, disappointment, oppression, discrimination, prejudice, whether you think so or not, because of the country that we currently live in and how the foundation of the country. There is some point in time in our life where we have experienced some sort of disappointment, rejection. And sometimes that disappointment comes at a place because of the color of our skin, or the fact that we're female, or our orientation, or our religion. But we're not supposed to stay there. Yes, it happened. We don't stay there. We acknowledge it. So that means we acknowledge our truths. We acknowledge how it made us feel. But how do we empower our life so we can empower other lives? And that is an abbreviated version of a racial healing circle. Racial healing circles before COVID can be 3 hours, because you have people who start really sharing stories and making connections. The first time I engaged in a racial healing circle with people from across the country, all different backgrounds, there were 5 people in the room that I had something in common with. I couldn't believe it. Every person that I talked to, we had something in common. There was the person, we had both started a new position. Then there was the person who both of our mothers were from North Carolina. There was the other person, we both had undergraduate degrees in accounting. It was the most enlightening opportunity that I could possibly imagine, because otherwise I would have never talked to those people. I don't know them. I'm not talking to them. But it created a space to where I have friends from the East Coast to the West Coast, across the ocean, because of this space of sharing stories. And Gail Christopher, the architect of the framework for racial healing circles, talked about policies, protests, programs, all of these things, and racism is still alive and well. But if we don't start with our shared humanity and taking time to share our stories, racism will continue. Because now, look at all these artists in this space. And so at this time, I want to transition. I want to transition to Josie to talk a little bit about what these artists are working on, and then give them an opportunity to reflect, resonate, what impacted them, and to share a little bit about what you're currently working on. So Josie, thank you for bringing everyone into this space. I turn it over to you.
Thank you very much, Director Stroy. And thank you, Kareem, for being here, and kudos to you. And thank you, Tiffany and Gary. So I want to sort of connect it back to when I said, Gary was sort of the person who said, Josie, you are an artist. Your activism is a creative process. And Gary and I sort of came together about 3 years ago and did our very first collaboration together. Gary, of course, is the artist who recreates the world, and he has collected over, I guess, about 400 interviews of local artists documenting their lives. And for us, not just in Newark, but for everywhere, to see stories of artists who are now gone on, and they're no longer here with us, but they're still feeding us. And through his interviews, we're able to do that. And so I thought Gary's work was incredibly powerful and important. And so Gary allowed me, being open, allowed me into a space to do a collaboration with him. And so about 3 years ago, we did this installation where we had about a 3-day marathon of artists talking about what it was to be an artist in the midst of gentrification in Newark. How are artists finding themselves? How are they maintaining their own authenticity and their agency? And what were the economic challenges they were facing in the midst of this? Folks were calling revitalization, and artists were experiencing displacement. And so we did this amazing collaboration. Over 50 artists came through, and we've done some mini collaborations since then. Recently, the work that I've been doing, which is the work around whiteness, growing out of my work on anti-racism. Gary and I sort of sat down and talked about ways in which artists can begin to participate in a process of understanding whiteness as power and not color, and to begin to speak to that process. And so this art project that I sort of created a premise around, and then Gary and I got together and sort of expanded it, looks at ways in which we can begin to interrupt our complicity in the mythology of whiteness, and to deconstruct it, to dismantle it, to use a word very much part of truth, racial healing, and transformation work. How do we dismantle it? How do we disengage from it? How do we begin to change the filters through which we enter into the world, which are these white filters, which in our desire to be creative and think outside the box, we're still doing it within a construct that says there's a hierarchy of values placed based on color, based on race, and all of these things. And so how do we begin to disconnect from that? Because that is a sort of a reconditioning and certainly sort of breaking out of not just a box, but breaking out of who we are because of internalized oppression. And so we embarked on this multimedia art project with a group of our local Newark artists to have them, through this organic process, express their interpretation of the mythology of whiteness, and to, from their particular vantage points, to then respond to it and offer to everyone, not just us here, but everyone across the world, whoever would see it, an opportunity to be reflective and to think differently, and to begin this conversation that we have to have in multiple spaces and in multiple ways, that not just in a facilitated training on anti-racism, or not just in a classroom, or not in some corporate office. We haven't. Should these conversations rest? These conversations should happen everywhere, in our homes and on the street and in artist studios, everywhere. And so this is an opportunity to bring that work into spaces where you're not being led by some, forgive me, Kareem, some scholar, some expert, someone who has the money and the power. This conversation, we all have an expertise on because we're all living it. And with that, I hand it over to my partner, Gary Campbell, and then to hear from Tiffany.
Well, the first thing I would have to say is that the Artist Creates the World, we're about at 500 interviews.
Oh, you're at 500.
Yes, and I initiated the interviews with these artists to create a platform for them. I saw so many artists doing their work here in Newark in 2013, 2014, and I wanted to provide a platform for them. So that's how the Artistry Creates the World was birthed. This movie this short film that we've done, where we use Tiffany Salas, John Gavin White, Janetza Miranda, and Joya Angola Thompson, is a way that we allow artists, in my heart, I feel it is very important for artists to learn how to use their art to deconstruct what whiteness is and what racism is. That is a big, humongous chore. But in this movie, we begin to talk about it, but not only talk about it. We had Tiffany do a tremendous performance that dealt with this whole whiteness. We had Janetta actually create a original song, a mythology of whiteness, which is tremendous. We had John Gavin White doing some of his poetry. It's just full, but it's just a starting point to show people how we have to deconstruct and relearn the things we understand through our art and through these tremendous artists. I forgot Joya. Joya also did use some of her photography over the years of the various dances. Well, it's not called dances, what parties at Lincoln Park and all over the years. So it's full. And then you have Josie and I in between, really sharing the insights and how we understand our life experiences.
Yeah.
And I'll pass it over to Tiffany and her role in the piece.
Thank you. So my role in the piece, I am a polymath of sorts. I have studied dance. I have studied Black identity and culture. I've minored in it. I've studied art. I've been a creative director. I've curated. So I kind of just encompass all these things into my artistry, as well as my form of protest, just because I feel that art allows you to give layers that people can peel back over the course of years if it's too far ahead. So what I did was I decided to climb the base of the Columbus Monument in Washington Park there in Newark. And I decided to do it only after the Black Lives Matter movement came to the forefront and the US and the world really started to recognize what the movement stood for and why it was. It wasn't a form of protest against America. It was a form of protest against the notions that form and shape America. And Columbus being the maritime, I would say, curator of just so much pillaging and pain that still affects people to this day. So as an Afro-Latina, I decided, why not trump all of his myths, the notions of his myths of his versions of what Blackness is. He was probably one of the foremost reasons we had the transatlantic slave trade. It's really all his fault. It's his fault that the Dominicans seem to not love on their people, the Haitians. It's all his fault that everything has been whitewashed the way it has. And the fact that we still have to learn about his contributions to the new world today, and, you know, failed tests, people get kicked out of classes, people are put or left behind because of notions of whiteness. And it just doesn't make sense to me anymore. Everything I've ever known really is a lie. So I wanted to just basically step on that lie with my own truth and tell a story from my ancestors, all the people that didn't have a voice. I feel like I am their voice now. And what I will do is I'll curate the truth with my artwork or my creative passions. I'll use this as my form of protest to just really get my point across. So I sat on the base of the monument, which is about 30 feet in the air. I had to climb it. I had some help from some really great friends. And we used a drone and we shot a piece and we put music to it. Victoria Santa Cruz, she has a song called Migración Negra, and that's the song that I decided to use. It was shot by Kay the Creator, and you'll just see little, I guess, a snippet of it in this upcoming piece or in the full piece. But I just really decided to dispel the myth that Columbus helped us become who we are as the Americas. He did more than that. He caused a lot of pain that seems to trickle systemically into our lives to this day. So I just wanted to increase dialogue about that. And that's it. Sorry.
And so we will show a small piece. I know, Director Stroy, I want to say to the audience and everyone, the full piece, when it is finally edited and it's finished, will be accessible to everyone. And we'll certainly share it with you, Director Stroy.
Okay. But there's a question. There was a question.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
What is your advice for young professionals who want to use their creative talents to become change agents?
So I'm going to take that first as an old person. So I am going to say, absolutely everyone, regardless of where you are in your career and how old you are, everyone at any moment can become a change agent. Because we're always, when Frantz Fanon says that each generation must find their mission, it's not just a new generation, right? It is everyone, every generation must participate in this process. And so the advice I would give to a young professional is read more, be thoughtful, be reflective, read more again. We don't spend enough time reading and reflecting and finding our core values and finding where what difference can I make? How can I connect in different spaces? And you never not have an opportunity to be a change agent. You never, ever not have that opportunity.
And so I would add to that I found in interviewing 500 artists, our spiritual work is of paramount importance. And not just religion, but you will find out that art is closely tied to all indigenous cultures. So there's some research and work we need to do along with the reading, but the spiritual work, find out where the spiritual work will inform you to let you know where your artistry is. Because most of us are creatives, but you have to realize the culture does not point us toward that creativity, and it does for its own benefit. So it's crucial to do. This is a lifetime learning experience where you have to search and do the spiritual work. And I'm not going to dictate what that spiritual work will be.
Tiffany, Kareem.
You want to
Are you gonna go? You first, boo.
Thank you. I mean, Gary, that spiritual piece really spoke to me because we were working with a group of young men who are aspiring artists in their own right, and we've come to the conclusion that we could give them all the opportunities, all the resources that they need, but until they do that spiritual work, it might not take them very far. So we're actually revamping the program to do that. And with that said, to young professionals, I would say find an organization, and I'll shamelessly plug Yendor for those who are looking to get involved and use their voice, that could offer the support that they need to give them the support and the resources that they need to kind of craft their artistry and to really present them as change agents. We're really looking to work with young people in that light, or early career individuals in that light, to really give them the support and the structure that they might need to kind of give their artistry some more thought as it relates to becoming change agents. So for sure, yeah. And there are other organizations that you would become involved with.
I would say, I guess I would piggyback also off of Josie. I would say that you need to identify first your core values. What are you standing for? That's first and foremost. You can be creative in so many different mediums, but you have to have a base of what you will and will not allow, what you will and will not take. what your core values are. I think it's necessary to understand who you are if you're going to be fighting for something. You can't just jump in. I noticed over the course of this summer, or the quarantine, the pandemic, how so many people really jumped onto the bandwagon of saying Black Lives Matter, but what were they doing beforehand, or what were they doing after they realized that they may have been, maybe a racist, and then realizing their faults and wanting to change and become allies of the movement. It's what you do outside of what people see on social media, or you having the protest sign in your hand. It's how are you living outside of all of that? So basically just identify who you are as a person first and foremost before you jump into social change, because it's like you can't be windy with that. You really must know what you're standing for. That's my advice.
I want to thank all of you for participating today, and we definitely look forward to some more of your work. Due to technical difficulties, the short video will be shown on our social media platforms, and we really want to highlight and promote once the full video is done, so that way we'll have another opportunity to come together to meet the rest of the artists to talk about the work that you're currently doing. It is extremely exciting to use all of our creativities. As Kareem said, creating opportunities in space makes me a creative as well. I may not be able to draw and sing, but I can definitely put an event together. So any final comments, any final thoughts, reflections before we end this particular session?
Thank you so much for having me. I'm super humbled to even be a part of something at Rutgers. It was probably my dream university, but unfortunately I had to go somewhere else. So I'm just happy that I made it here some type of way. Thank you. Thank
Tiffany,
you.
you'll be back.
Thank you, Sharon.
Thank you, Gary. Tiffany, don't worry. You'll be back.
Listen. Oh, trust me, you'll be back. When she says that, you will be back.
Oh, are you kidding? Absolutely. We have some amazing students. And it's not a shameless plug. It really is just a plug. We have amazing students in programs, NJ STEP, HLLC, LSAM, Honors College, the pre-college trio programs. We have amazing students, and our focus at Rutgers University Newark is a social justice focus and to create leaders of change agents. So what better place, Tiffany, for you to come and do some work? It's okay. You'll be back.
Yes, I hope so, yes.
Well, I just want to give a shout out to everyone at Rutgers, because, the motto at Rutgers is, you're just not in Newark, you're of Newark. And, having the artist recreates the world, forming a partnership in that endeavor, because this is bringing the words and images and thoughts of so many local artists. And so this is, I think, is a wonderful opportunity. And I want to thank Director Stroy and soon to be Dr. Willis for having us here. Yes, please invite us back. There are so many other artists. And so this particular project isn't, we wanted it to be a multi-gender, multiracial, multilingual project. And let me just say, there are so many other artists doing like work. And so having I foresee a bigger conversation somewhere down the line, once the piece is done. So thank you. It's all about liberation.
Awesome.
Thank you, Director.
Awesome. Thank you. Everyone, be safe. Have a good day. Thank you for participating.
Thank you.
All right.
All right.